Sinamile makaya.
Today we've got Dr. Ralph Mkuni. We welcome him as a guest to Agenda for Action program, which is part of mtwazireview.com. Dr. Mkuni, welcome to the Agenda for Action program.
Thank you. I'm honored to be with you today.
Thank you very much. We've got a number of issues that we need to cover. But first of all, we need to know who Dr. Mkuni is. So, in brief, who is Dr. Mkuni?
Well, I suppose you are asking who I am with respect to the political spectrum. What I would say is that the driving force behind my thinking about our politics and the scourge that has befallen our country is that there is too much of labels. When people talk of their politics, they would want to put left, right, whatever. If I were to characterize my politics, I would say certainly it veers more towards the socialist label, the left label, but heavily laced with libertarian thought that individuals could be freed and to express themselves as openly, a state that is going to allow individuals to be and to intervene, the state to intervene only where there is competing demands by individuals. That is where my politics essentially is.
That is very interesting. But just to take you a bit back, really, you are the Secretary General of ZAPU. Can you tell us about how you became to be the Secretary General of ZAPU?
What ZAPU would want to achieve is to empower people, to empower, I would say, people that would regard themselves as Zimbabweans. And therefore, as far as I know, it is the only party that has got structures that are of equal standing inside and outside the country. And therefore, it has 14 provinces in total, with the possibility that they could go to 15. So Europe is one of those provinces, and in the pursuit of that equal standing, I, as the person that was nominated to the NEC, the National Executive Council of the party, then my name was forwarded, and in their own wisdom, my comrades, my other members, then asked me to be the Secretary General of the party.
Oh, thank you very much for that. Now, we've had elections in Zimbabwe, the 2013 famous or infamous elections, depending on how people sort of which line or which side of the political spectrum they are on. ZAPU participated in those elections. How prepared was ZAPU in those elections, or to participate in those elections?
Well, it's for a party that was at that particular time, really since its reformation as an independent entity, to have something like 2 or 3 years behind us was too little. It was, as compared to other parties that we were in contest against. Obviously, our preparedness was not as we would have wanted to, but you can't actually say, as far as elections concerned, wait and wait and wait until we are ready to. You have got to go with what everybody else wants when they want the elections.
Interestingly, just before the elections, ZAPU did, out the fact that the voters' roll was in disarray. There were double entries in the voters' roll, and that indeed Zimbabwe was not prepared for the 2013 elections. Can you comment on that?
Yes, indeed. Double entries is an understatement. It was more like multiple entries. And I think that ZAPU will take credit for being the party that exposed that. Now, we alerted all the parties that were going to be disadvantaged about that possibility. But our voice, unfortunately, was not heeded. There were people that felt that despite the extensive rigging that we knew was going to actually be in the elections, that thought that they'll be able to break through, notwithstanding. We knew as we went in, and as I have said many times, the leadership of ZAPU met quite frequently to try to actually determine whether we pulled out, knowing that the outcome of the election was well predetermined before the elections took place.
So why then did ZAPU participate in an election that ZAPU knew was already predetermined, the outcome was already, you knew, Dr. Dabengwa knew that, there were double entries and he went to that election. So what's the justification of participating in an election that you know the outcome would be the victory or the victory of ZANU-PF?
To be honest, I mean, it is something that as we review our participation, we are asking ourselves. There are two things, of course. What we considered was, what would be the effect of actually boycotting those elections? Most probably nothing. 2008, everybody boycotted the elections except ZANU. But the world actually still just went along with what was a completely unfair exercise. Now, secondly, ZAPU has got this thing that in as much as the presidency, the leadership, can take momentous decisions about the direction, participation, those things have got to be determined by the big legislative group of the party called the National People's Council. Now, the timing of the elections, the short period that was actually offered before, did not allow for that. Now, of course, arguments can be put forward this way or that way, but we still feel that very poor though the election, or I would say very unfair though the electoral ground was, we nonetheless think that our participation opened up sort of some weaknesses that we can exploit in future elections.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kondo. But do you feel that that decision, to a certain extent, did discredit ZAPU in a sense that, okay, you find that, okay, the voters' roll, you are the first guys to say, well, the voters' roll is not okay, and you are credited for actually, bringing out that evidence and showing it to everybody and all the parties that are involved. But then, ironically, you are the guys who participate in the election. What do you think, the public take you for? Do you think that does damage your the ZAPU brand?
I don't think so, Timbani. I think that you've used the word discredit. Discredit, I think, is a very strong word. Now, I'll give you an analogy in answer. You are in a football match, and you can see that the officials are definitely biased.
Yes.
And it's a tough call to say we are just going to actually walk out of the pitch. And the trouble is that doing something like that, the other team that remains on the pitch still is declared a winner. And that is what we feel. We still feel that in as much as we are completely disgruntled with what's the whole process, we are disgruntled with the outcome of that election that we know was completely rigged. We nonetheless gathered some important intelligence that we are going to be able to employ in future elections.
What really did ZAPU gain out of participating? What is this intelligence that you got?
Well, for a start, the rigging mechanism, as we said, was exposed by ZAPU. We know how the ruling party rigged the elections, and we are building up contingencies to actually sort of deal with, not necessarily, we don't think that they're going to actually do it exactly the same way, but we know exactly to what extent the ruling party will actually continue to maintain power. The second thing is that we think that even just the appearance of the bull on the voting slip was in itself quite a success. And we also identified areas, pockets, where we can develop our membership, and that actually helps us in some way to strategize. I will say that for me personally, one of the biggest gains was actually sort of going around during the election period and engaging with people on the ground, hearing what they are saying, and that actually sort of we incorporating into forming policy for the future.
Apart from the voters' role being chaotic or in shambles as part of the rigging machinery of ZANU-PF as it is alleged, what other sort of strategies do you think ZANU-PF employed to complement its rigging systems right across the country?
And I've got to say here, the greatest challenge for Zimbabwe is to have a power in party that actually controls all instruments of power in the country. ZANU controls the legislative, it controls the army, it controls the media, it controls all of that. Now, when you've got a party like that, now it's a win-win situation. Now, the other thing that I pointed out when I was asked questions similar before was the delay in telling the electorate that there was an increase in polling stations, that we had so many of our people that were actually coming back and saying they'd been turned away at polling stations because nobody knew where they were supposed to vote. Now, that in itself is something that we are working on with the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to shame them into knowing that things like that won't actually be tolerated in the future. And I think that you would have heard in the news, and it still has to be corroborated, that first of all, they are talking about the sort of giving the vote for a start to the diaspora. Secondly, I think that having actually been caught with their hand in the till, as it were, the ruling party isn't going to do anymore. There are quite a lot of such small things that, we're gathering, we are actually sort of analyzing and trying to find out exactly how this rigging and these distorted elections, how they do it, so that we can work on for future elections.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhwena. But 4 years from now, it will be another election, 2018. So having gathered all this information, having been aware of all this information, what strategies is ZAPU, hopefully in partnership with other parties, putting in place to enforce or to work with is it the ZCE? Yeah, exactly, the body that monitors elections, to ensure that the voters' roll that is being put in place for 2018 is being sorted out in advance, because otherwise you're looking at the situation, election time, then everyone is crying foul, the voters' roll is not ready, everything. So what's being done now to ensure that come 2018, ZANU-PF cannot rig the voters' roll and rig, the election altogether?
As I indicated again before, the complexity of the electoral landscape in Zimbabwe is such that actually sort of going for just one strategy is completely, would just be missing it all completely. As I said, that the hanging on to power, or that the ruling party is doing, is actually sort of by hanging on to all instruments of governance in the country, and therefore to actually sort of home in only on the rigging issue is to miss the boat. Let me give you another scenario that could have actually resulted. If, let's say, the ZANU government had, or the ZANU party had actually fallen, lost power, then what? But because ZANU is the legislative, it is everything, it is the ceremonial, it's got the executive power. So all the parties that you refer to, independently as of now, because to say we are working with other parties, we are not at that particular stage, but we as ZAPU have got to be analyzing, looking, trying to actually sort of anticipate how this animal of trying to actually cling on to power, how it is going to actually exhibit itself, and looking at strategies of sort of counteracting it.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Now, you had ZAPU and MDC just before the election, at the 11th hour, did sort of announce a pact, an alliance pact. Is that still existent, or is just water under the bridge?
That alliance was a pact for electoral purposes. And what we are doing alongside with reviewing the outcome of the elections, that is one of the things that we were looking at. Looking long term, if that is a sustainable sort of coexistence that would be beneficial not only to ZAPU but to the people of Zimbabwe. But there isn't anything that has been taken down, because there was nothing that was actually written down. You quite rightly said that it was the 11th hour, and it was, for that reason, a weak alliance, because alliances like that, if they are to subsist and persist, are usually better done with enough time so that the terms of reference are a bit more binding than what we had in that alliance.
Okay. There are a lot of political schisms at the moment in Zimbabwe. Well, within ZANU-PF, they've always been there. We know that in ZANU-PF there are several factions jostling for power. Mugabe is 90 years old, so people are trying to position themselves maybe to take over. But also there seems to be, political schisms within the opposition parties in Zimbabwe. The biggest of all these schisms has come from the MDC party, with BT suspending the leader of the movement, Tsvangirai. Now, within that, there is an underground sort of song that's being played of a united democratic movement in Zimbabwe, so of a loose coalition to try and topple Mugabe in 2018. Where does ZAPU stand in this at the moment?
For a start, it is important to clarify that since 1984, ZAPU actually called for United Front, not other parties or parties dissolving themselves into one collective party, but to have sort of parties or entities of similar thinking coming together for the better of Zimbabwe. Now, what we have actually sort of rejected completely is a coalition just actually with one sole purpose of removing one party. What we want coalitions or fronts to be is with a proactive agenda for the betterment of Zimbabwe. Now, we have the principles that have been set, which were laid down all those years, 1984, 1988, and we repeated this last year, which were passed by our MPC. Now, we are there. We will come with people of similar mind for the rebuilding of our country. But we will not just go in just for the sake, just actually be without knowing exactly what the purpose of that coming together would be. Certainly to actually sort of say it is just the ousting of one dictator to impose another dictator is not in ZAPU's agenda.
Okay, this is a very interesting point because at the moment it seems that the chorus is on the removal of Mugabe, but not the changing of the governance system or the governance structure of the country. So where does ZAPU sit in terms of the governance structure of the country? What's your policy?
Well, that's the crux of the matter. Now, of course, I mean, ZAPU being the party that initiated the struggle for independence, for freedom, for emancipation of the individuals, has learned this. I mean, if one looks at 1980, the whole removal agenda to remove the colonial regime and put in another, people should have learned that we removed the colonial regime and actually brought in maybe a much, much worse regime. And as far as governance of Zimbabwe is concerned, ZAPU has been very, very clear. I mean, we can say that the center of it is to ensure that every Zimbabwean enjoys the rights of freedom. And that is why our flagship policy of devolution of power, to ensure that the people are empowered where they are. Now, the problem is this, with something like that being so new to the people. Now, one thing that we have actually learned about governance is that, and actually sort of giving people, or sort of people getting their freedom, is that people have got to be educated on the issue of what individual freedoms, individual responsibilities that go with it are. And so, as far as ZAPU is concerned, we are working with people on the ground to ensure that people can actually claim what is their own. Now, if we have a properly devolved country where people are empowered where they are, with their own resources, to work with their own resources, to make their own decisions on issues that affect them. That is what is the central plank in our system of governance. It's not pie in the sky. If one were to go to South Africa and see the exercise of decision-making that is done on the ground in the provinces, maybe that is something that is akin to what we are looking for in Zimbabwe. For once, I apologize for making this response as long as it is. Now, if somebody takes it to the nitty-gritty and to sort of the minute detail, now, if people had that access to the self-governance, controlling their resources, the people in the eastern part of the country, where the diamonds are, would have a say into the wealth that is being extracted from what is their own land. They would have a say there. Now, if we look at Matabeleland, Matabeleland is immensely rich in terms of mineral resources, it's agricultural, which is lands, all that, but people do not have a say on how what is theirs is actually appropriated and used. Everything is actually sort of geared to actually empowering Harare. Now we look at what has happened to industrial activity in Bulawayo, but because decisions are made elsewhere, people are suffering as a consequence of not actually sort of making decisions on things, on the resources that affect their livelihoods.
Okay. And in terms of actually effecting devolution of power, how does that work? What would be the levers of power or the structures of power to implement it, so that you don't have the executive or the other majority parties or sort of overruling the intended structures or local structures of devolution of power, having an oversight over that. Obviously, we'll have the executive having an oversight over that. And if the executive doesn't necessarily agree with that, then they would supersede the decisions made at local level. So how does this work? How does this animal called devolution of power work?
Well, in actually working as people's servants, which ZAPU leaders are, it is always most important to listen to what people say. It is important and informative that in the COPAC outreach, which was carried out before the new constitution came in, that devolution of power is something that was endorsed by a big majority of people all throughout Zimbabwe. The people in Zimbabwe know exactly what it is that they wanted from there. Now, if we look at the template of devolution that ZAPU actually is after, it is to empower the provincial or the regional parliaments so that they are making the decisions. We do have, it is the national parliament would have the arbitrating role, but the only powers that will be residual with the national parliament would be issues to do with the defense of the country, foreign affairs, and the legal systems that actually sort of play in the country. Now, to say then that you've got a central executive that would actually overturn what decisions were taken at provincial would not actually exist, because what you would have in the national parliament, the representatives that would be in the national parliament would be coming from the provincial government, parliaments, and therefore responsive to what people actually sort of wanted in those provinces. So this national parliament, comprising of people that were answerable on the ground wherever they would not have powers that superseded what people are actually saying on the ground.
Thank you for that very comprehensive answer. But now the question is, how has ZAPU sold that message to the common person in Marange, common person in Matabeleland, that this is what we are agitating for? This is the system that we think can benefit you here locally. That being in a minority does not necessarily mean you're powerless. Yeah, you can have local power, you can have control over your resources. Your resources can benefit you, can develop your area, schools, hospitals, roads, you name it, and jobs around. So how are you sort of putting this message across?
You're talking about how has ZAPU actually sold these messages is something that has happened in the past. We are currently still engaged with actually passing the message to, actually it is, as I said to you before, freedom, actually people's freedom is something that people learn. Now sometimes people don't know when it comes to actually independent choice, what is available to them. Now here it is that we actually must celebrate people that have been exposed to different ways of governance. I mean, I can actually say even a long time ago, when I went to what was then Zimbabwe or Rhodesia at that particular time, and went to Botswana and actually saw what people were enabled to actually say to the legislators. Now sometimes people are not aware of what powers, what freedoms they can exercise in determining the career of the direction of their lives. I have sometimes actually sort of written to say an unfree life is sometimes not worth living, because sometimes people actually sort of can be so beholden to a dictator. And I'll say, actually, without extending this answer beyond, now you are well read to know that when the slaves were freed, the people that actually sort of agitated against the freedom of slavery were some slaves, because all of a sudden they had to actually decide on things that actually determine their livelihoods, whereas hitherto somebody else did the thinking for them. It is the same situation. We are working on the ground, resources permitting, to work with our people, if I can actually say that not in a patronizing way, working with our people to actually sort of indicate the advantages of democracy, and of devolution as well. One of the things that we can achieve that, and I'm selling this to all our members, is if we can actually sort of be seen to be empowering people within our structures, that is one of the ways that we could sell this idea of devolution effectively.
Do you think that the recent poor results for Matabeleland are linked to the lack of devolution?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, as I said, poor results, you can actually extend it to something that I know is very close to your heart, in a facetious way. I would say, if the country was devolved, if people were empowered, would the people actually invite Gukurahudi to come and kill themselves? Now, it's exactly that decisions are being made remotely by people that don't understand what it is, what situation is on the ground. You get people just taking people to go and teach at schools that they cannot communicate. They are not actually adding any value to the children, and therefore that has got consequences, the devastating consequences for the future.
Baby.